And it will be the greatest live sporting event anybody has ever seen. This is going to be a fucking masterpiece. We're going to fucking blow the doors off anything that ever goes into that arena again. I fucking guarantee it.
Here we go.
I don't know where she came from,
why this fight
but goddamn, I wanna say something.
Historic night at the UFC. Can't wait.
From hosting small-time UFC events to hosting the greatest sporting event of all time for UFC 306 at the Sphere in Las Vegas, Dana White has yet another foreign sponsor that's going to change everything for the UFC. But how did the promotion come to this? The UFC has used a well-rounded business strategy to become a leader in combat sports. A key part of this strategy is global expansion, hosting events in countries like Brazil, Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and China. This is what's helped it grow its international fan base and land deals with major networks like ESPN that put the UFC on the map. But the pay-per-view model is what drives the whole organization and generates enough revenue for fighter branding that draws in millions of viewers for big fights. You see, fighter branding is what's turned athletes like McGregor and Ronda Rousey into stars, and that's what drives pay-per-view sales. It's a whole cycle. Pair that with merch like branded apparel and mementos, and you have a recipe that generates some serious income that in turn helps promote the UFC brand. The UFC's strong social accounts are a whole other animal. Their social media presence ensures constant fan engagement and attracts new followers. Of course, high-quality event production and a focus on the fan experience are also top priorities. Along with investments in modern arenas, which we'll get to later on in the video, platforms like Dana White's Contender Series and the reality show The Ultimate Fighter also encourage some serious talent development and guarantee a constant supply of new fighters. That in turn enhances the sport's legitimacy, attracts sponsors, and helps expand the organization in new markets like China and Russia. Not only that, but the inclusion of women's divisions has expanded the UFC's appeal to a completely new audience. The UFC didn't even slow down during the COVID-19 pandemic. Instead of going on hiatus like most businesses and organizations, the UFC adapted and hosted Fight Island in Abu Dhabi with strict safety protocols while other sports were paused. All this has helped the UFC absolutely dominate the MMA scene and become a $11.3 billion organization. And when you have this much money, you can explore new ideas, like UFC 306 and the Sphere. As the president of the organization, Dana White has played a huge role in its rise from a meager $2 million promotion that Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta bought in 2001. The secret ingredient that turned the UFC into a multi-billion-dollar organization is Dana's strategic vision. Firstly, his main focus is on global expansion. By hosting UFC events in countries like Brazil, Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and China, he has significantly expanded the UFC's international fan base. This not only increases market reach, but also diversifies revenue sources across multiple regions. And partnerships with networks like ESPN provide coverage that makes UFC events more accessible to a broader audience in places like the Sphere, where Dana is down $16 million. UFC CEO Dana White announced that UFC 306 will be a unique event, as it will be the only time the promotion holds an event at this venue. What they're going to pull off at the Sphere will never be done again, because this will be a once-in-a-lifetime experience for sports fans. It's also going to be an incredible tribute to the Mexican people for their extraordinary contributions to combat sports. Most importantly, Dana White is excited that Turki Al-Sheikh and the Saudi General Entertainment Authority are partnering with him to make this the greatest event in the history of combat sports. But we'll get to that later. White has also collaborations with clothing brands, energy drinks, and consumer products that not only increase revenue but also enhance the UFC's fan engagement. This promotes brand loyalty and increases the UFC's market share internationally. Additionally, active participation on social media platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter allows fans to interact with fighters, get real-time updates, and see behind-the-scenes content, all of which improve the fan experience. This sets a standard for live sports entertainment, and the regulatory compliance and athlete safety under White's leadership are the reasons why the UFC keeps getting more sponsors. But let's circle back to UFC 306 and Dana's bold new move. The UFC made headlines when it announced UFC 306 due to a sponsorship by Saudi Arabia. This event is scheduled for September 14th at the infamous Sphere in Las Vegas and is being referred to as Riyadh Season Noche UFC. This follows the success of last year's Mexican Independence Day event at T-Mobile Arena, with Dana White promising an even grander spectacle for 2024. However, the Riyadh season branding got mixed reactions on social media. Some fans are actually questioning the Saudi influence on the event's name and why it's happening on Mexican Independence Day. Around the same time, Dana White noticed how Yuri Process was accusing Alex Pereira of using spiritual practices during training, and he used that to add fuel to the fire. You see, this is all part of White's strategy to keep the hype going, which isn't the easiest in today's world. Controversy equals questions, which demands answers, so viewers will always want to get to the bottom of it. It's genius. Meanwhile, Jamahal Hill is also looking for a rematch against Pereira after his loss at UFC 300, so there's more than enough hype to go around. On another note, Dana White announced that the Fight Inc. docuseries won't be returning because of its disruptive structure, despite the positive response from fans. After all, there's enough controversy to go around, clearly. Dana also has to refrain from revealing too much behind-the-scenes information, so all eyes stay on UFC 306. You see, this event is a big moment for the UFC, which will introduce several big changes that could reshape MMA and sports entertainment. One of the biggest changes with the UFC 306 is the inclusion of a sponsor in the event name for the first time in history. This partnership with Saudi Arabia's Riyadh Season initiative represents the UFC's strategic move to collaborate globally and diversify its revenue sources. While the sponsorship model is common in other sports, its adoption in MMA signals a new direction for the UFC and may set a precedent for future events. Beyond those innovations in logistics and branding, UFC 306 represents the UFC's continued evolution in fan engagement and global reach. The UFC wants to draw in more people and solidify its place in international markets. Apart from that, UFC 306 comes at a time when the MMA community is having more conversations about its global expansion, business plans, and relationship to world politics. But the announcement of Riyadh Season as a sponsor has started discussions regarding the strategic alliances the UFC has and how they might affect the sport's global fan base and identity. So, what could be different? Well, Riyadh Season will be prominently featured throughout the entire broadcast as a fixed watermark on event day. Additionally, Riyadh Season's branding will be visible inside the octagon alongside other sponsorship logos. This sponsorship will also appear on all promotional materials for Noche UFC, including event posters and the backdrops used during pre-fight and post-fight press conferences. The UFC and Riyadh Season will also collaborate to produce original content to generate excitement for Riyadh Season Noche UFC. This content will be shared on the UFC's social media platforms and digital channels, marking the latest expansion in Saudi Arabia's sports initiatives. Turki Al-Sheikh is the man who has been instrumental in rebranding Saudi Arabia's image through sports and has successfully brought in many popular sports such as boxing, Formula 1, WWE, and MMA. While Saudi has worked with the PFL and MMA, it now aims to make a significant impact with the UFC, which recently held its UFC Saudi Arabia card. Speaking of fight cards, since UFC 306 has a Mexican Independence Day, there's a high probability that it's going to feature its Mexican stars. And fans expect Alexa Grasso to defend her flyweight title against Valentina Shevchenko at this event. The UFC is dreaming big. With events held on several continents, the UFC has made MMA a worldwide phenomenon over the years. This global reach not only opens up new markets for MMA, but it also brings together athletes from all backgrounds, promoting unity and cross-cultural exchange. The UFC has raised the bar by blending athletic competition with high-quality production and compelling stories in sporting events. Economically, the UFC has generated billions of dollars through pay-per-view sales, broadcasting rights, sponsorships, and merchandise. The UFC has also played an important role in legitimizing and regulating combat sports by establishing strict safety standards and collaborating with athletic commissions around the world, and elevated MMA status as a legitimate and professional sport single-handedly. Its business practices have impacted other sports leagues, motivating them to combine entertainment and competition and use digital channels to reach a worldwide audience. But the question is, will Dana White really be able to keep the business booming like he has been all this time? Let us know what you think in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this.